Hello and welcome to Forbidden Talk, where we discuss controversial subjects in the Middle East. This week we shall explore the topic of interfaith marriages. What sounds like a simple event in the West, a civil marriage and no religious contract, is a near impossibility in the Middle East. Over there, the laws governing marriage and inheritance are dictated by religious authorities. This obviously presents problems for the increasing number of people who want to marry outside of their faith group. What challenges do interfaith couples face? What are the repercussions for their children? Are times evolving for better or worse? We shall delve right into the heart of these issues, but firstly I'd like to welcome my distinguished studio guests, Father Nadir Dako of the Chaldean Catholic Church in London and Danny Mackey, co-founder of the Syrian Youth in Britain. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Before we move on, let's take a look at the short report.
In a country like Britain, where there are people from all walks of life, interfaith marriages are inevitable. But the Middle East is no stranger to interfaith marriages either. In fact, countries like Lebanon and Egypt, where all types of Christians and Muslims reside side by side, interfaith marriages are on the rise. But marriages of this kind can often come with their own set of challenges. How would the marriage take place? Would one partner have to convert? Would the families accept the marriage? And whose religion would the children follow? These are just some of many obstacles couples from different religious backgrounds could have to face and overcome. In some Middle Eastern countries, getting married outside of your faith is illegal, and with no civil marriage system in place, couples would have to travel to other countries in order to get married. In 2008, Cyprus recorded 523 couples from Lebanon came to get married. Marrying a person from a different sect can be just as great a challenge as marrying someone from another faith. For example, a Sunni marrying a Shia or a Catholic marrying a Protestant. Unsuccessful interfaith marriages can come with a hefty price, and more often than not, it's a price paid by the children.
Danny, interfaith marriage is on the rise in the UK, but as couples from different faiths fall in love in the Middle East, what are the challenges they face?
Well, they face numerous challenges in the Middle East, most of all cultural, religious challenges, also legal challenges. I mean, couples in the Middle East who are in the interfaith or changing faith to an extent, they can face the biggest problem of family, losing family. The Middle East is a place today which is very volatile in terms of taboo issues, and the issue of interfaith marriage is very taboo, in fact, to the extent which is outlawed in the majority of Arab countries. In states such as Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, the issue of interfaith marriage is very controversial, one which is very hard to carry out. We've seen numerous Lebanese, Syrian couples going to Cyprus or to Western European nations just for the issue of marriage, because it is actually illegal and outlawed in Arab countries. It is because there is a society which is traditional, a society which is based on values from decades and centuries, which has failed to adapt to the new era and has failed to grasp the concepts of the modern notion of citizenship, etc., interfaith, liberalism, which is present in Western countries. And this, up until now, poses an enormous threat to any person who wants to marry from another person who is from a different faith. And this problem shall continue for the foreseeable future, unless there is a change in law or mentality in the Arab world.
Father Nadir, did you agree with that? Do you think interfaith marriage is a taboo subject?
Yes, of course. If we talk about the marriage in the Middle East, especially in Iraq, for example, we must to understand that the marriage built on religious marriage before the civilian marriage, so that that principle is faced the traditional problems and the faith problem between Islamic Christianity inside. I mean, the problem inside the Christianity itself, the problem between Orthodox and Catholic, the religion, the Muslim problem, Sunni, Shia, and other minorities, religious minorities, so Mandians and Yazidis, etc. So, and all these, if we looking after the principle of marriage as a love, Many people, many youth, they feel love with apart from another religion. He must define about his love against his faith. So here we have a big problem in this way.
Okay, and what are the main differences between interfaith marriage in the UK and the Middle East? Is it that question of civilian versus religious marriage?
Here is we have the problem between the personal liberal mentality and the civilian law in general. I mean, the civilian marriage in the law. So how to? It is the same problem in the Middle East, but here it's from the other. We start in love, but how to manage with this love in our principles of life as liberal people.
And in the Middle East, you start as
a religious people to the civilian law.
Okay. Okay. Danny, in an interfaith marriage, is it more than likely that one person has to compromise or give up their own set of beliefs to make it work?
Almost certainly, especially in the Arab world. For example, if you have a Sunni and a Shia, one of them will have to change an element of their faith for the actual arrangement to come to take place. It's impossible to have a complete set of a Sunni and a Shia or a Christian and a Muslim, for instance, without one of the individuals changing some form of religion or values or beliefs. This is a must, but it's not necessarily that simplified. There are over 17, 18 different types of Christians only in Syria. There are very many different types in Iraq and Lebanon. It's the same with the Shia and the Sunni. There are different sects within sects. So what you have is a large plethora of different groups, different ethnicities, different sects within religions. This makes it far more difficult for interfaith marriage, especially at a time where you have a very charged political atmosphere, which is based on, at times, sectarian issues and paradigms. You have the issue of interfaith marriage is highly controversial. It not necessarily just leads to problems within family. It leads to family conflict. It leads to conflict between neighborhoods. I mean, it leads to honor killings in some places. This has been very, very clear in the Middle East. And if you could get possibly reports from police or security forces within the region over the unreported death of individuals over the issue of interfaith marriage, they couldn't give you general reports because it's such a taboo topic which it really isn't taken.
Why are they unreported?
They're unreported because it's an issue of the traditional family setup. The family nucleus in the Arab world is traditional. It's based on a certain religion or a belonging to a certain sect. So when a family is faced with an issue of intermarriage, especially when it's a woman in the family, violence is very common, especially in areas which are tribal, or you have a lack of post-structuralist thought. Then the issue of violence against people who are attempting to intermarry is very general. And this leads us to an overall problem with legality in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. When you have no laws protecting the individuals who are undertaking the process of interfaith marriage, then there is a problem within governmental society, not just civil society. And this also leads us to the other topic of migration, of the diaspora, of people leaving the Arab world, going elsewhere, just for the topic of intermarriage. I mean, it's very, very difficult this day and age to have a marriage between a Muslim and a Christian, for instance. The problems on family, on society are too much so that if an individual wanted to marry someone from a different faith, he would have to leave the country to do so. And this is unfortunate, but it's a common reality within the Middle East today.
Okay, we'll get back to that. Well, joining us now over Skype is Julian Bond, Director of the Christian Muslim Forum. Julian, can you give us a few examples of the ethical guidelines you give to help faith leaders give pastoral support?
Yes, indeed. They're on our website on the resources page. Some of them include that there should be no forced conversions, that people shouldn't make arrangements for how things are going to work out before they actually get there, because they don't know. And religious leaders should be able to support and coach and help people with their relationships, whatever they are, and that people shouldn't, I'm coming out of that, people shouldn't feel that they can no longer practice their religion because of their relationship.
And do you come across many couples of Middle Eastern origin who want to intermarry?
Well, I think some of the people that I've had contact with, who've contacted me specifically at the Forum's office, have been of Middle Eastern origin, or I'm contacted by their partner. So I was contacted recently by a woman from Birmingham who was in a relationship with a Muslim man from Turkey, and they weren't going to be able to get married in Turkey because of the kind of situations that the other speaker on the programme was just describing. But hopefully they would be able to in this country. And one of the issues is that the things that are allowed by the Quran, like Muslim men marrying women from among the people of the book, although it's allowed, it's very difficult in practice and is frowned upon in the communities. And there's all kinds of issues for that, which the other contributors just been describing. And we need to have a better understanding of each other and help families and religious leaders and communities. And that's one of the things that the Christian Muslim Forum has been working on in partnership with the Interfaith Marriage Network and the Muslim Christian Marriage Support Group since we launched our guidelines in November 2012. But also before then, we were involved before then in passing people who contacted the Forum, who had relationship issues around Christian Muslim marriage, onto our colleagues at the support group and the Interfaith Marriage Network.
And in the case of couples who have been together for a long time in secret, how do they deal with telling their families when they want to marry? Well,
if they've been living in secret, it's tremendously difficult to tell their families, and they haven't told their families because of the taboo, which is, I think, has also been described. So there tends not to come an opportunity, or no good opportunity, for them to say so. Now, I don't know if you've come across, I think you've had or you're having Tamina Kazi on this programme?
Yes, indeed.
So she's been talking about the Hidden Heart film, which Zara Afzal is producing. So that has got the actual stories of how things have come out. So the woman who was being kissed by her boyfriend in the market, and her mother spots her, and then what happened after that. So she wasn't going to tell, and then her mother found out, and it was very, very difficult, and I think she was disowned by her family. And I was in touch with another programme this week, and I think one of my colleagues was on that programme yesterday afternoon, where there was a very similar situation of a Muslim woman who'd been in a relationship with a non-Muslim or Christian man for 6 years and was unable to tell her parents. People do need to be able to talk about it, and there should be no violence and no coercion when they share what kinds of relationships they are. And we've discussed this with priests and imams in both religions. And one of the key things that our colleague Sheikh Ibrahim Mogra has said, he's the co-chair of the forum and one of the people who helped us put the report together, is that if someone comes to you, so it's a Muslim woman in a relationship with a Christian man, that Islamically he would say, well, you can't have this kind of relationship, but he's not going to treat her unkindly, and he's going to help her to continue to practice her faith rather than shut the door so she loses her faith, she doesn't practice Islam, or any other kind of negative outcome.
And finally, Julian, what is the greatest issue of our times that couples who select interfaith marriage face?
Well, I think it's not so much about selecting interfaith marriage, unless people are in an interfaith relationship and they decide they're not going to get married. They fall in love with each other, and as our societies become more mixed and more diverse, people encounter each other more, and religious people tend to encounter each other just as non-religious people encounter other non-religious people. So meetings are happening. They're increasing numbers as the number of Muslims in the UK is increasing and the mixing is increasing. So the incidence of Christian-Muslim marriage is going up all the time. We don't have any figures yet for the 2011 census. The key issue, I guess, is how can we get married and how can we make it work? And who is there to support us? And we've offered the guidelines in the report with case studies. There's 5 or 6 case studies in our report. And we've highlighted the tremendous work of the Interfaith Marriage Network, the Muslim Christian Marriage Support Group, who run a monthly support event at a church in London for couples. And there's also another group meeting in Scotland. So it's to support people. There's a Facebook group as well. Support people, help them to get through the situation, to preserve and support relationships, and to help people engage with all the difficult issues and engage with their families and their communities, and enable them to keep practicing their religion. So one of the issues that came up from your previous contributor is there compromise? Mm-hmm. There's always some kind of compromise in any kind of relationship, but people should be able to practice their religion. And Islamically, and we've had this on good authority from scholars and imams, if a Muslim man marries a Christian woman, she should still be able to practice her religion completely freely.
Well, thank you, Julian Bond, for sharing your views today.
Thank you.
Father Nadir, compromise. What do you feel about this?
I know all these stories, and there is many stories in Iraq, especially when the students from different religions live in the same university, and they feel in love. They try to do something, but they refused by the society. So in Middle East we have the problem of the society, but here in UK we have personal problem, because it depends about the mentality of the person himself. So we have a relationship before the marriage, and this relationship, it is unacceptable in the religion. I mean, all the religion in the Middle East. And we have the problem of marriage itself, because interfaith religion, it is unacceptable in Christianity especially, because they are minority in big society of Muslims. And they try to define about their society, their community in this big. And we have the third problem is after the marriage, because there is a divorce, while in the Christianity, in Christianity there is no divorce.
Yeah, it's very hard
as we look at it as a Christian, there isn't enough civilian support for the lady after Christian lady which interfaith marriage with a Muslim or a man, because they ask him to be Muslim, especially the man, to be Muslim, because they didn't accept future of this family to become a Christian family.
Right. Well, I was going to mention the case of in the Lebanese news in 2013 of a Druze woman who secretly married a Sunni Muslim man outside her faith, and the bride's family tortured the new groom and even castrated him. And all of this because she had married outside her religion. Now, do you think certain sects worry that if their communities marry another faith, they will become extinct? I think you mentioned this, Christians surrounded by Muslims, and it's you're kind of trying to preserve your faith.
Yeah.
So is this why Yazidis and Druze forbid intermarriage?
Yeah, and they will be refused by the society or their own family, They will because the family want to be in this faith, so they refuse anyone interfaith marriage with Muslims, because the future of this family will change to become Muslims all. Because there is no freedom to choose the faith in future. They must be Muslims. So that's why they face refused by the society and the family and the church, for the Christian and for the religious people in Yazidis and Mandians religion.
Well, with the exception of Muslim men being allowed to marry non-Muslim women, the current legal system in Lebanon obliges citizens to convert in order to marry members of other faiths. Organizations such as Civil Marriage in Lebanon point out that the failure to implement civil marriage constitutes a breach of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, of which Lebanon is a signatory, as well as Article C of the Lebanese Constitution's preamble. We interviewed Yumna Maklouf, a lawyer specializing in interfaith marriages, who gave us more insight in the Lebanese community.
We do not have official statistics. There is a difficulty in obtaining statistics due to the various authorities before whom the Lebanese can conduct a marriage contract. Lebanese people have many options to get married. They can go to any country in the world and decide to get married before the country's authorities. Regarding children, the laws of the country where the parents got married determine this situation. If the parents decide to get married in Lebanon before any religious authority, the law of this specific sect is implemented on the children when it comes to custody. If a couple conduct two marriage contracts, a religious marriage and a civil one, whether the sectarian marriage occurs before or after the civil one, the law of this sect is implemented according to current jurisprudence in Lebanon. The Lebanese law considers that if a couple get married before religious authorities, even if they conduct a civil marriage contract, in a way or another, they want to subject their marriage to the law of the chosen sect when it comes to custody and other matters. Civil marriage held in foreign countries takes into consideration the children's higher interest. It means that it does not take the age of the children as a criterion, as the case is in Lebanon. In Lebanon, each sect has set an age for the children at which the mother takes custody over them. There is an idea that a young child needs the care of his mother, and at an older age, the child is given to the father. But the children's higher interests are increasingly being taken into consideration because there has been a lot of progress and work done on this issue. Of course, during the divorce, the religious issue appears again. The family of the person getting a divorce gains more power since it supports that person, and the religious standards reappear more strongly. And of course, if there is a problem concerning the custody or guardianship over the children, the religious element will appear again. The father can ask for the custody over the children before the religious court if the mother is from a different sect, saying that the children need a religious education. We all know that the religious authorities take into consideration this issue as a principal criterion to make decisions about custody. A negative element in the relationship is when it comes to organizing things. They have to take care of things more than other couples do. For example, they ask a lawyer about issues such as inheritance, since a Muslim cannot inherit for a Christian and vice versa. And this question can cause a problem for the couple that might lead to an end for the relationship before marriage. If a woman is Christian and the husband is Muslim, the biggest problem the couple would face is the parents. The parents sometimes accept interreligious marriage, but on the condition of holding a religious ceremony. In the case of a Muslim woman, it is very difficult because the husband has to declare that he embraces Islam, even if the religious ceremony was only symbolic for her. This causes another obstacle they need to overcome. So now, in case the family accepts the idea that people from different religious backgrounds are getting married, the family always insists on a symbolic religious celebration. This will also cause problems because it results in legal consequences later on. The majority of the people think that if they do a civil marriage and a religious ceremony that they consider symbolic, the religious law does not apply and the religious courts do not have any power, which is wrong. When you hold a religious wedding before or after the civil one, the Court of Cassation currently states that the sectarian law applies.
Danny, that was an interesting point there at the end about how people in Lebanon don't think that religious law has any power, but it seems to be the opposite. Have you come across this assumption before?
Well, to an extent. I mean, religious law is powerful in Lebanon, despite the fact that it's not actually in statute, in the actual law, because it it does prevent couples from intermarrying. Couples are forced to leave Lebanon and go to other countries such as Cyprus to actually seek marriage. And within the actual laws of Lebanon, in regards to custody of children, in regards to actual how an interfaith marriage would actually take place, the laws are the strictest possible in probably the whole of the Middle East, despite the fact that Lebanon has one of the most ethnically diverse societies in the whole of the world, we could argue. In terms of confessionalism, it's one of the largest countries. So obviously religious law is a problem, but I don't think it's different from any other country in the region. I mean, the whole problem of interfaith marriage within the Middle East is that it's just not feasible within undercurrent law in the Arab countries. For people to actually intermarry, they need to leave the whole of the Middle East. This suggests that the problem is larger and relates more to identity within Lebanon and Syria, etc., than the actual issue of religious law. We could argue the problem of identity within Lebanon exactly is the largest problem, as people who belong to different sects, judging that Lebanon has a very unique history of religious sectarianism. They won't allow their children to marry from different sects, and this conveys a larger, more volatile problem within Arab society of the different inter-ethnic, interfaith rivalries which control this problem.
Father Nadir, picking up on that point about sects, is that the same in Iraq?
Yes, of course, it's the same, and they cannot continue if they stay, because the family will kill a part of this marriage.
And also a certain degree of ostracism as well, sort of being forced out of your community.
Yeah.
That occurs as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with this is that you're ostracized not just from your own community, but from the whole of society. The difference between the East and the West is that in the West, they provide a level of support for individuals who are seeking to intermarry, whereas in the Middle East, if you want to intermarry, then you are considered alien to society. You're rejected from your side of your sect or your side to which you belong to, and your partner is the same. So you have to face the difficulty of living life alone, because the fact that your family will disown you is in fact a very unfortunate reality. And this does lead us to the problem of post-structuralism within the Middle East, of how you have a society which is tribal, which is very vehement in regards to implementing old religious laws and old religious values, whereas in the West you have more of an open culture in regards to interfaith, especially with the issue of homosexuality, of course, which is another taboo topic in the Arab world. But the exact issue of interfaith within countries such as Syria and Iraq, it's not just taboo for the families, but it's an issue which is taboo for society and politics, which is why you see very little politicians raise the issue of interfaith.
Joining us now from South Africa is Dr. Taj Hagi, Imam of the Oxford Islamic Congregation and the Director of the Muslim Educational Centre of Oxford. Dr. Hagi, contrary to what many Muslims think, you don't share the view that Muslim women are not allowed to marry outside of their faith. Why is that?
Because Islam is a gender equal religion. If it allows for men to do something, then clearly it should also allow women to do the same thing. The Quran says in chapter 5, verse 5, that Muslim men are permitted to marry virtuous women of the people of the book, Christian, Jews, and other people of Scripture. But it's deliberately silent the other way around. And the reason for it is quite simple, is that because in 7th century Arabian society, highly patriarchal, chauvinist, sexist, and misogynistic, for a woman to marry outside of her faith, the likelihood of her firstly remaining Muslim, and secondly, her children to be raised as Muslim was nil or negligible. So that was the reason it was originally imposed, it was practiced. But there's no Quranic justification or ban or prohibition that says women cannot marry outside of the faith.
And
do
you come across many couples of Middle Eastern origin who want to intermarry?
Yes, quite a lot. I mean, Lebanese, particularly Syrians, some Iraqis, some Egyptians. Because what's happening, we now live in a global village. People have air travel. You meet and mix with people from all over the world. And when it comes to love, there's no foretelling ahead of time who you will end up with.
Are there
People,
any similarities between their issues?
what issue?
Whatever they say when they come to you for interfaith marriage.
Yeah, the women obviously do not just want a civil marriage. To them, going to the registry office and doing it governmentally is not enough. They need something more spiritual, something that is religiously sanctioned. And so all these Muslim women are highly educated. They have fallen in love with someone outside of Islam, and they wish to remain Muslim. And the marriage nikah that I conduct enables them to do so. But let me just explain to your viewers, I only marry people on the basis of a mithaqan khalithan, a strong covenant and abiding agreement that's required in the Quran. The Quran invented the idea of the prenuptial agreement. And so this prenuptial agreement contained in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse 21, we find very clearly mentioned that any couple embarking on marriage need to have this contract. And so in this contract that I do with interfaith marriages, the couple sign up to 5 permanently binding clauses. Number 1, the Muslim woman will always have freedom to retain her faith, practice her religion as she pleases, and the man has also a similar right to uphold his religious beliefs. Secondly, the household as a married couple that they will establish will be a halal one. In other words, no alcohol, no pork, no gambling. Number 3 and 4 are linked. Should she predecease him, die before he does, he, as the surviving spouse, must make sure that she has a janazah, a Muslim funeral ceremony. And number 4, after the ceremony, of course, and he, as a surviving spouse, should make sure she's buried in the Muslim section of the public cemetery or graveyard. And number 5, very, very critically, the children are raised of this marriage. The children are raised as Muslim, subject to the fact that they need to be respectful of and familiar with the father's faith. So these 5 clauses make it quite clear that the Muslim woman will retain her faith, her household will be halal, her children will be Muslim. So my question to my opponents and people who say this is illegal and haram and contrary to Islam, what's the beef then? Because in this day and age, women often earn more than men, so this idea that somehow men only are the breadwinners is a nonsense. And secondly, this premarital contract makes it show that her Muslim preoccupations and practices and customs and traditions, all of that will be upheld throughout the life of the marriage.
Okay, Dr. Hagi, and a final question. Do you think the Muslim community will have to continue to adapt as we see more of this?
Absolutely. This is a social time bomb, meaning that young Muslim women are not finding suitable partners in their own peer group or their own cultural or national group. And so they're looking beyond. And so, yes, we're going to have many more of these intercultural, interracial, interreligious marriages. And Islam and Muslims must come up to date regarding this contemporary issue. We cannot continue to sweep it under the carpet, and neither can we, which some people do, is to get the non-Muslim partner and the non-Muslim man to go through a sham conversion to Islam. That's a lie. He will be lying threefold. He's lying firstly to himself because he's not Muslim. Secondly, he's lying to the Imam who's doing the conversion ceremony. And thirdly, he's lying to God. Now, if he's willing to lie at the beginning of his marriage, this man has got no integrity, and so that marriage will not be successful in the long term.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Hagi, for being with us today. Dr. Taj Hagi, who is the Imam of the Oxford Islamic Congregation and the Director of the Muslim Educational Centre of Oxford, said that women aren't finding a suitable partner in their own peer group, and so they marry outside. Do you agree that this is the reason people are marrying outside of their faith? Father Nadir.
Yeah, what to say is the society in the Middle East, he refused anything out of the standard of morals by the name of religion. And there is many things. The interfaith marriage is out of the standard rules. And even something like homosexual is refused by the society at all. They cannot imagine, because it's written by the books, I mean the Bible and Quran, that it is a big sin. So all the society, because it is from a religious background, he refused all these at all. For example, last 2 years, it was a fake speech in the TV about some young try to be like homosexual traditions. So the people killed them in the streets just because they dressed something to say that we like this. And they killed very bad way, in very bad way, yeah. So even in the interfaith marriage, they try to stop anything, make them a problem for in the future. They didn't make this in a very civilian way, or to enter in dialogue to discuss the problem. No, they refused, and that's all.
Danny, we've spoken about the challenges. Are there any positives to interfaith marriage?
Well, there are positives in everything. Firstly, when you have interfaith marriage, it provides a mixing between different religions and sects. And in an age which is globalized, in the age of information which we could subsist in, this is something very positive. When you can have people from different faiths integrating, creating a new life, mixing these faiths, although it doesn't appease conservative people in the Arab world, it is a sign which is positive. It shows that people have learned to coexist to another level in the Middle East. It shows that there are Western values which are actually influencing actions in the Middle East, because such actions are considered very traditional in the Arab world. There's something which is, as his father said, it's something which is considered very taboo, to an extent which is punishable by death in some areas. So for this to actually be happening, it does show that there is more integration these days, more assimilation. It shows that the age of globalization has reached almost all parts of the Arab world, and the Islamic world as well. I mean, the issue of interfaith marriage between Christians and Muslims, you'd argue that for Christians it's more taboo for the issue of identity and history and culture, and for the Muslims it's probably more based on strict religious doctrine, because the Christian population in the Arab world have subsisted for longer than the Muslim population, and considering the political upheaval in the Arab world, and the fact that the Christians are now engaging in a new diaspora which is being forced upon them, the issue of intermarriage makes it far more difficult. To have Christian-Muslim interfaith marriage at this moment in time shows that there is more sentimental value between different sects and different cultures in the Middle East than what's clear for everyone to see. This is something which is positive, although the hard part is the fact that when these couples do get married, their lives are very difficult. And this is obviously no thanks to the help of Arab governments who have helped create this situation in the first place. But there is hope, and there is some positives to take out of this.
We took to the streets of Lebanon to hear what people think of interfaith marriages. Let's take a look.
I'm definitely for intermarriage, because I think individuals should have the freedom to choose their own partners. They should not feel any pressure from society or their families into choosing a partner from a particular community just because they want to satisfy someone. I'm personally going to marry someone from a different faith. I was born a Shia and she was born Maronite, and we're going to be married next month. We're going to have a religious ceremony for the family, but we will not register that contract. Instead, we will go to Cyprus, we'll have a civil contract, and then hopefully this will be the marriage contract that will be registered. Personally, I don't celebrate religious holidays unless I'm invited to a particular party or a gathering, but otherwise I don't make it a purpose to celebrate religious holidays.
Of course I am with interreligious marriage. I think there is no difference among religions in our society. I do not think people still care about religion. We live in these regions together, Muslims and Christians, and we do not ask about other people's religions. So if two people from different sects love each other, felt comfortable together and decide to get married, it is fine. It is not a problem at all. I think that religions are only a mode of life for people, old customs that are imposed on us now. This should not cause any difference at all.
Yes, I am. It depends. It depends on the two persons, because it has to be really such a love, because it's not easy, but it could be very rich as an experience. Enriching, yes, and it will give a lot. But they will have to face some problems.
What problems?
People, society, even the parents, you know, there are traditions, there are old-fashioned ways to rule the world, and then they have to try to face and to fight all this. And if the wedding is strong, it can work and it will be really something. I know people and friends, and some have very nice life, and they are living happily and peacefully, and others unfortunately got divorced. It has, maybe not because of religion, because of traditions that are from religion, and because maybe of the parents too.
I am split between the two, actually. Part of me is pro, part of me is anti. Somehow I am pro, because religion doesn't really mean much to me. I don't practice any kind of religion, so it doesn't really affect my opinion from this standpoint. I am against because there is a certain baggage that comes with religion, at least in this part, in the Levant, since it is an integral part of the way of living of people. So, in a way, it affects their thinking and their habits and their way of doing things. And normally, it's about risk mitigation. And in order to mitigate risk, you have to practically tap into the same social background in order to make a marriage succeed or not. Or even at this, there is no outright guarantee that if you marry in the same religion, it will succeed more than if you marry into a different religion. Not so far. But it looks like in the future there is a couple, yes. I don't practice and I don't celebrate any of these. It's just a social event more than it's a religious event.
There is no problem, of course, because this decision is the person's decision only, not his religion. At the end, you are marrying a person, not his family or religion. You agreed with that person, and there is respect between you two. I know many people who have married across religious boundaries, but in Lebanon it is not really taken into consideration because the society is Oriental, so they prefer to marry someone from their own religions, so problems would not occur later. Of course, if the married couple were in agreement, their parents would not be from your sect, you will face problems with your children's names and upbringing. I have a lot of Muslim friends and I do not have any problem with them.
Father Nadir, most of the Vox Pops didn't seem to be overly concerned by religion and seem to be raising the same issue, that as long as there is love, then the relationship succeeds. Do you agree with this point?
Of course. The marriage success with love, but this is a theory. When we need in Middle East, we talk in society, it depends how to activate this. In some families, they have no enough education or enough civilian life. What about some others are very radicalian with their religion or tradition? So how to manage with all these backgrounds in the idea of love? So it is easy to say yes, but it is very difficult to make it.
So not in practice?
Yeah, in practicing.
Danny, picking up from the point mentioned at the end there, do you agree that when you marry an individual, you don't marry everything that comes with that individual?
To an extent, when you do marry an individual, especially in the Arab world, we have to differentiate here. This is the Middle East, and this is Lebanon, which is in fact one of the most stringent countries in regards to intermarriage and interfaith marriage. Of course, Egypt, Syria, and Iraq being the worst. You do, to an extent, marry part of this individual's life. Religion is in essence a very significant part of his life. Religion, family, culture, tradition, and this in the Arab world is a very controversial topic. So when you do marry such a person, it is inevitable that parts of their life are going to influence parts of your life, as a relationship does not necessarily only feed on love. Love is significant in a relationship, but in the Arab world, it takes more to have a relationship than just love. There needs to be social suitability. There needs to be an element of at least religious consensus from the social perspective, which will influence a relationship inevitably, as in reality it is more religion and culture which make relationships in the Arab world happen, because it is very rare to see interfaith marriage in the Arab world unless it's done abroad or outside of the Middle East. So in a relationship inside the Middle East, it takes more than love, and at the same time you need to have this consensus in terms of culture, in terms of society, in terms of family and religion to make the relationship work, as it will not necessarily only work on love.
As we can see in today's Lebanon, people seem generally positive about interfaith marriages. Now let's take a closer look at some of the results of interfaith marriages in the Middle East. Danny, how do couples in the Middle East who are in interfaith setups decide how to raise their children and what faith they should be raising their children?
I mean, this is very difficult, but preferably for couples which are engaging in an interfaith marriage, this would have been decided at the point of marriage or before at least, as this would have been one of the most significant topics to be discussed with the families of both individuals or with each other. If it's between a Christian and a Muslim, then it will be difficult. If their son goes to a church or a mosque.
Okay.
In essence, bringing up children is very difficult and an extension of the problem which is present in interfaith marriage. This is the most significant problem, and it can result in divorce at times, can result in a breakup of the family because of the direction their child is going to be raised in, religiously. So it's very difficult for a couple to actually decide on how to raise their child and in which religion. So there is no real set answer to this topic. It's kind of done spontaneously.
I mean, Father Nadir, what are the consequences for children in interfaith setups?
Well, the person cannot live in the Middle East society without a family or without a religion. So that's why he must choose. But when he is a child and one of the parents are Muslim and the other from the other minorities religions, he must choose. He must choose Islam as a religion by the law of Sharia. Because we read in the Quran that the Muslims are the best nation among the other nations for the world. And so the children must be Muslim, and he has no choice for the religion and others. And about the society, this is when he changed. I mean, the family changes religion. It's been refused by all the friends and all the community, old community where they live. So they need to change the place where they are, especially if they are in a village or a city. They must to change the place because they will be a target to kill. I mean, from different part of the religion, Muslim or Christian or minorities.
Okay, well, we have to move on. And now with us is Ziad Fleifel, who was brought up in an interfaith household, being the son of a Christian Belgian mother and Lebanese Muslim father. Ziad, Can you tell us a bit about your experience of being raised in an interfaith family?
Yes, hi, good evening. As you just mentioned, my mom is a Belgian Christian and my father is Lebanese Muslim. And they got married in the mid-70s. And at that time, in my opinion, Islam was not seen as it is now. So what my parents did not encounter any problems during in getting married and during their marriage. And my childhood was really open to both religions because we were raised in an open manner, open to both religions, and basically that's it.
And did your family celebrate religious festivities from both religions?
Excuse me?
How did you celebrate festivities?
Oh, my parents, you want, I didn't get the question, please, right?
Did you celebrate Christmas and...
Yeah, we celebrate both festivities, Christmas, Easter, and as well as Muslim Eid and all the festivities for both religions without any problem.
And did your mother have to convert to Islam?
No, she did not. Actually, my parents got married in 3 ways. They got married in the Muslim court in Lebanon, as well as a Christian marriage in a church in Belgium, and a civil marriage.
Well, thank you so much, Ziad, for participating on today's programme. Father Nadir, do you think children who are products of interfaith marriages end up not having any faith at all?
In countries as the Middle East countries, they must have a religion because they are unacceptable from the governments before the society.
They have a religion on paper, but in reality, do they end up becoming a bit disillusioned or a bit not strongly Christian or not strongly Muslim because they've had that mix?
Yeah, nowadays I can say more than 60% of these societies are confused about their religion because they cannot imagine the truth of the faith, especially after the ISIS movement and the ideology of this group. Most of the Muslims are very confused about their faith, and because they cannot imagine that their faith are just like this. So we talk about Muslim, but the Muslim ideology about the marriage, it isn't very clear for all the Muslims in all of the world. So there is many different kind of Islamic theology about the marriage. So which kind of Muslim we are talking about? I mean, I talk about Muslims because it is the more than 80 or 90% of these countries are Muslims.
Thank you. Well, joining us over the phone now is Tahmina Kazi, Director of British Muslims for Secular Democracy and also Executive Producer of Hidden Heart, a documentary which reveals the backlash that Muslim women often face when marrying outside their ethnic communities. Tahmina, what were your aims with producing a documentary on this matter?
Hello there. First of all, thank you for inviting me onto the show. When I became the executive producer of Hidden Heart, there were several reasons that I was drawn to it. Number one, I saw that the filmmaker was genuinely passionate about the subject and was sort of making a pioneering film about this issue, which I believe no one else has attempted to do before. There have been a number of films about interfaith marriage, but none, as far as I'm aware, about the specific issue of Muslim women who marry non-Muslim men and the backlash that they sometimes face from their families and communities. And this film is a sort of warts and all portrayal of that backlash, which we don't really get to hear about in the mainstream media.
And could you give us some examples of how women are stigmatized when marrying outside their faith group?
Well, they're stigmatized with people saying things, sort of trying to implicate that they're not proper Muslims, that they somehow abandoned their faith, they turned their back on their faith by marrying someone from a different faith background. And all of this is complete nonsense, of course. But then there are also cultural issues. So then sometimes even when Muslim women marry converts to Islam, they still experience opprobrium from their families because there's a perception that they're heaping shame upon the family by marrying outside of the ethnic community as well, the ethnic and the sort of the cultural community, and that they're turning their backs on the cultural traditions of that community by marrying out of it.
And are men stigmatized in the same way?
No, this is the issue, and I wish that all the civil society responses to this problem had grappled with that distinction, because according to Orthodox Muslim scholars, it is acceptable for Muslim men to marry Christian and Jewish women, but not the other way around. They would say that it's not acceptable for Muslim women to marry Christian and Jewish men. As far as I'm aware, there are only 2 imams in the whole of the UK who actually conduct religious wedding ceremonies between Muslim women and non-Muslim men, and even they are quite sort of. I mean, they don't publicise their activities that much, because even they would get a backlash too.
Yes, I mean, can you tell us about a memorable story that has stuck with you from the film?
Well, it was to do with the first protagonist who you see in the trailer. She talks about the time when she took her Nigerian Christian boyfriend, who was later to become her husband, out to Wembley Market, and just as he was about to lick ice cream off her nose, just behind him, she ended up seeing not the police, but her own mother, and she actually says in the film that she would rather have been taken by the police.
She'd rather have been taken by the police?
Yes, than be spotted by her own mother in this situation with her non-Muslim boyfriend.
Father Nadir, do you have anything else? Have you anything to contribute to that?
Just I want to say that the Christian religion accepts interfaith marriage. There is a special exception from St. Paul for the interfaith marriage. So the unacceptable marriage, it isn't because of the religion, but it is because of the tradition. In the Middle East, especially, the Christians feel very bad from Muslims before last century. Most of the Christians who are in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, north of Iran, they run away from genocide which the Turkish Muslim make it against the Christian southern of Turkey. So that's why there is a very big problem between these two societies. It isn't just the religion problem, but it is another things.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there is a political tension or a political difference which adds to the interfaith problem. I mean, when you have different sects marrying, it does relate to politics in a sense, as the Middle East is defined by politics. But I would just like to discuss the issue of the Muslim woman when she does go into interfaith marriage. She is very much vilified. She's treated as an alien to her religion. She's outlawed. She's treated in the worst possible ways. She's deemed as an outcast of Islam. And it's not because religion tells her that she's like this. It's because the people who are implementing religion the people who are translating religion according to how they see it, it's because they have the problem. They have the stagnant theorem of how to translate events, and this is a general problem which Muslim women do face in the Western world as well, and the Arab world. I mean, it's not just strictly Syria, Lebanon, Levant, North Africa, etc. These are problems which Muslim women all across the world deal with, Nigerian Christian boyfriend, etc. Such an issue would be so taboo in the Arab world that it could lead to, unwillingly of course, to her death. This is how controversial this topic is in the Arab world. Whereas in the West, it is slightly more open and slightly more up for debate. But in some circles within the United Kingdom, this form of religious extremism is still very present.
Tamina, we've spoken about the challenges. What positives have you seen to interfaith marriage?
The main positive is getting to know cultures and religious traditions that are not your own, and to sort of find ways to negotiate between the challenges that a married couple would face on this journey. So, for example, things such as whether the household will be halal or not, or how the family will worship, how children will be raised. These are all monumentous challenges for any couple, but particularly so for an interfaith couple. And I do know of couples who have resolved these successfully. And I know that, for example, with the Christian Muslim Forum, they had a marriage counsellor named Heda Al-Yusuf, who was a specialist in counselling couples in interfaith marriages.
Well, thank you, Tamina, for your very informative views today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Danny, what about inheritance? People often are switching religion in the Middle East because of inheritance laws. Do you see this happen?
It is seen to happen. I mean, especially in countries where you have a strong religious law regarding inheritance, which obviously I think it's more fairer in some countries than normal law when you have a religious court to deal with these settlements. It has been seen to happen, but it's not as common as people, let's say, getting married for purposes of love or purposes of relationship. I mean, the latter is more common, of course.
And Father Nadir, interfaith marriages are increasingly unacceptable in Egypt. For instance, Father George Matter, a pastor in Egypt, advises young people that they should choose their life partner from their own religion. Will you agree with that?
I agree if there is a freedom in these countries, if there is a possibility to choose. And what I want to say, in countries in the Middle East, there isn't a civilian law. It is a Sharia law under the table. Where, for example, when a criminal happened in Iraq, my country, we need to have a permission from the family before we went to the court to judge the killer or to judge the people who make the problem. So there is another law before the civilian law. And in this way, if we look at the marriage in these societies, it is in danger, interfaith marriage, because the society will make problem and troubles for these new couples in this marriage.
Okay. Well, joining us now from Lebanon is Tarek Naaman, the son of a Muslim father and a Christian mother. Tarek, what was your religious upbringing like? Were you confused by the two?
Not really. It was, I mean, my parents made sure to explain to me that there is, I mean, one message that unites both religions. So, and the question of the difference between them came up at a later stage when I was asked by someone at school about my religion. So, not really, no.
And I'd like to know if your parents received any difficulties from their families accepting their chosen partner.
From my father's side, there was no problem. From my mother, there was. It's, I mean, mainly for social. I mean, it was considered socially unacceptable to marry someone from another faith in the 70s, especially in the middle of a civil war in Lebanon. And I think also the problem usually arises from the woman's side of the family, because children will inherit their father's religion and therefore will not join the mother's religion. So, yeah.
So how exactly did the communities react? Was there gossip?
I mean, yeah, it's mainly on the gossip level, not more than that. I mean.
Okay, and would you agree that it was a social taboo for your parents marrying outside of their faith?
It was, definitely.
And have times changed, though?
In some parts of the country, yes, but in most, no. It's still an issue. People would not mind it if, I mean, it's a social issue as much as a religious issue. So if there's a big advantage socially, it could be accepted.
And the final question, are you religious yourself?
No, not really.
But so do you think this is as a result of being brought up in a multi-faith household?
Yes, I mean, it definitely has to do with that, plus the fact that we were a multi-faith house living in a diverse area and attending a diverse school. I mean, I think all of those are related and they impacted, I mean, the way I approach religion.
Well, thank you so much, Tarek, for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Danny, picking up on that last point, interfaith marriage means lack of faith in the next generation.
To an extent. I mean, certainly when you have an interfaith marriage, the next generation is going to be less zealous. They're going to have less religious clout. They're going to be less kind of integrated with religion and religious aspects. When you have the Middle East as a region which is so ethnically diverse, so ethnically homogeneous, you have so many different sects, different religions, different branches of sects. It's amazing. It's the most confessional place in the whole of the world. When you have a secular kind of interfaith marriage which breeds secularism in a sense, it does prevent the religious continuation of a sect or a particular religion. What you're going to have inevitably is an element of lack of religious understanding. This is going to be portrayed in the children. The next generation is going to suffer religiously from a lack of informative knowledge on this particular religion or this particular subject. So all in all, in general, this is going to impact negatively on religion, but in terms of secularism and open society, it will have more of a positive impact.
Father Nadir, are children going to suffer?
Of course.
So you agree with that point?
The religion, if we use it, I mean use it and out of its benefit, it will be very dangerous. So the marriage and interfaith from different religion, it'd be a big problem for the children. The children needs a very special society, special family to grow in. So this background must be one and one culture, one mentality. So this mentality, it came from many backgrounds One of these are religion. So the idea of religion, I mean, I talk about the Middle East, not in West.
Yeah.
So this religion must be very point for these children. So if there is different and problems and between the parents, so this will be very suffering for the future of these children.
And so what advice do you give to couples seeking to engage in an interfaith marriage?
To leave the Middle East.
To leave the Middle East. What do you think about that?
I concur. That's exactly the same in terms of my opinion. It's the only way they can live a stress-free, successful life as couples.
Well, as we draw to the end of our show, we can see that interfaith marriages in the Middle East and among Middle Easterners in the UK are not without their challenges. Although views about intermarriage in the Middle East are generally becoming more accepting, it could take decades for religious internal schisms and inconsistencies to create openings for a strong secular equivalent. What remains to be seen is whether individuals are offered a set of alternatives that can protect their rights and freedoms, which would encourage social integration in the region. I'd like to thank my guests, Julian Bond, Dr. Taj Hagi, Tahmina Kazi, Ziad Fleifel, Tarek Naaman, and of course Father Nadir Dako and Danny Mackey, who join me in the studio. Just to add, you can subscribe to Forbidden Talk on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Forbidden Talk TV. And on a final note, we'd like to leave you with a short, positive insight into interfaith marriage. Until next time, goodbye.
Of course I am with interreligious marriage, since Lebanon is a country that has different sects. It is normal to find this in Lebanon. My mother is Christian and my father is Muslim, a Shiite, and I am married to a Sunni man, so our family is mixed. Even my cousin is married to a Christian man, so it's not only my parents. Many members of my family have married from different sects. They do not have a problem with that. This is the good part, especially here in Lebanon, because we celebrate all the religious holidays. On Christmas we dine with my mother's family, on Easter too. On the Fitr holiday we celebrate with my father's family, and during Ramadan we break the fast with my husband's family. We live and celebrate all the holidays. It is normal. I could not have a civil marriage because in Lebanon civil marriage is prohibited, and when we did our calculations we figured out it will cost us more than $3,000 and we could not afford it, so we were obliged to get married here. For me it is only a paper, it does not matter who writes it. I would have preferred to have a civil marriage, but it is fine, I do not have a problem with this.